Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis now delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay.
Morning all. How are we doing? It's been a long while since I've done anything like this, and I've literally just decided to do it this morning. Just really as a little bit of a catch up. I've not done a lot of video content. I've not brushed my hair. I've not done anything like that. But things are beginning to move. Things are beginning to happen at Sincilbank, and I think it's important to drop back on some of the club content now. Been a great summer. I've really enjoyed Euro 2020. I'm sure you all have as well. Congratulations to Frankie Bolly, who won the Euro 2020 Stacey West Prediction League. If you can get in touch, I'm assuming looking through Facebook that's a fake name. If you get in touch, I can arrange getting you your prize. Good morning to everybody who's already watching. Really appreciate it. I didn't think on a Thursday, is it Thursday morning, I'd get that many people watching, to be fair. But good morning to Kate, who's watching. Good morning to Connor, and good morning to my friend Jimbo. Hope you're doing well, pal. So look, what's really prompted me this morning is actually some news which some might construe as negative. It's been announced by Pete O'Rourke, Football Insider, who tends to be as reliable as they come, as reliable as a 1980s Land Rover, that Teddy Bishop is on his way to MK Dons. I know Teddy Bishop is a player that we've been linked with, and one of the tweets I've seen this morning, and quite rightly so, because it's certainly how it seems, is Lincoln miss out on Teddy Bishop. And I think it's important just to study the landscape of the transfer market, because look, every year you'll hear somebody from a football club saying this year's different. Last year it was, it's going to be tough to sign players because nobody knows where the values are going to be, and some players are rating themselves highly, and we're fishing in the smaller ponds, not the bigger ponds, and that was accepted widely. And then of course this year there's no salary cap, so the same old suspects can start spending big money. And look, I don't want to offend fans of any team at all, but MK Dons are spending big. Ipswich are spending big. Wigan, I mean, honestly, Charlie White chooses Wigan over Celtic. Jesus Christ, I wouldn't even do it on Football Manager. I'd feel that guilty. So I think what you've got here is a different transfer market. And sometimes when the clubs say it, sometimes you'll read something from Jez George, great guy, by the way, and he's telling you how the transfer market's different, and you think, yeah, but the clubs say that every year, let's spend some money. It really is different. It is different again. Those teams last year that couldn't spend can. I mean, Portsmouth were very, very restricted last year because of not just the salary cap, but squad numbers as well, which I don't think is an issue again. Ipswich are going through a rebuild, and what a rebuild it is. And sometimes you can look at these signings and you can begin to worry, and I'm guilty of it. I look down, Joe Pigott going to Ipswich. What a signing he is. Charlie White going to Wigan. Quality. Do you know what I mean? Great players. Teddy Bishop, I'm not sure he's that great player. And MK Dons will, I say not that great player. I think he would be a great signing for a club. I'm not sure he's, Charlie Wyke or Joe Pigott difference maker at this point in time. And then I think you look at the Teddy Bishop situation. MK Dons have just lost Scott Fraser to Ipswich. Wonder if there's been a little bit of something done there. It's not a player swap as such, but it's one player goes one way, one player goes another way. So at this moment in time, I'm not heartbroken on losing out, in inverted commas, at any player, because you don't know any player that we are actually interested in. And let's be honest, last night's signing of Dan Lundaloo, see, I can say it, it kind of came out of the blue for many. I got some messages saying, wow, I can't believe we've signed him, expected him to go back into go into the Championship on loan. Real Betis had been sniffing around there, managed by Pellegrini, obviously former West Ham, who's seen him. So it's a good signing. But if you were to ask any League One club right now, would you rather have Pigott, Wyke or Lundaloo? They would say Pigott or Wyke. What's to say at the end of the season that's still going to be the case? Last season, I can't remember the kid's name that was at Doncaster. Was it Taylor Richards, something like that, came from Brighton. Outstanding. But would you have called him as that player? Elliot Sims was he the boy from Everton that was at Blackpool? What a player. But you wouldn't have called it. When he first signed, you would have gone, why haven't we signed Charlie Wyke? Why haven't we signed Joe Pigott? Why haven't we signed whoever the big name striker was last season that then didn't end up getting all the goals? So, I think there's always an element of caution around transfers. But then that does work the other way as well. We look at Chris Maguire, who I think on paper looks a very good signing. Sunderland fans were more upset to lose Maguire than they were Charlie Wyke, because Charlie Wyke is like, you liken him to a car without petrol. Charlie Wyke, unless you're landing the ball on Charlie Wyke's head, is ineffective. Absolutely ineffective. And he's been very, very poor for Sunderland until this last season. And then all of a sudden he's been superb. And I remember watching him in the playoff semi-final, looking at Charlie Wyke on the first leg, thinking, what the hell is the fuss about? Because we had a striker, we still got him, Tom Hopper, who works, excuse my language, he works his bollocks off that game. Got his goal. Yeah, he's not always in the right place at the right time. And when he is in the right place at the right time, he doesn't always put it in the net. But I tell you something right now, and you can call me crazy, I'd rather have Tom Hopper in my squad than Charlie Wyke all day long, because names mean very little. It's how they function. So Wyke's like a car without petrol. Maguire is like solar-powered car. He's the one that can go on his own. You don't need anybody around Chris Maguire for him to do what he does. Yes, he flopped at Bury, but he works well with Michael Appleton. So I'm quite impressed with that bit of business. With Luis Fiorini, we're swayed by Manchester City. We're swayed by a good loan spell over in the Netherlands. I think we've got to exercise a degree of caution. We are now going to be looking for a Brennan Johnson. We are now going to be looking for a Morgan Rogers, players that come in and score goals and create goals and look very, very good from these Premier League teams. Not everybody is going to do it. Not every player is. Now, I think Fiorini will. I like to think I know a little bit about football. I think it'll take him a little bit of time to get up to speed in League One. I also think that he's come here to improve his strength, to improve his physicality. And what I hope that we see is a player like Robbie Gotts, who comes in, who I really rated, and he's more or less instantly acclimatized in terms of the physicality, and then just needs to adjust to the pace of the game. Likely the Luis Fiorini, flies, man. Likely that Luis Fiorini will be a starter, I think. Likely that Chris Maguire will be a starter. Likely that Dan Lundley will be a starter. And if you count all of those as starters, and Tom Hopper potentially as well, you've got the front four. And outside of that, you've got Bridcut and McGrandles and Sanders battling for the two midfield places. You've got Poole on the right. You've got Bramall and Eden battling on the left. You've got Monsma and Walsh, hopefully fit, in the centre with Adam Jackson. So then all we're doing is we're sprinkling the hundreds and thousands on top of the cake. The icing's already there. So from now on in, anybody that we sign has got to be able to challenge for the first team, but they can't be a player that we can sell first team football to necessarily. I don't think Michael, who, best wishes, by the way, for today. I know he won't be watching this, but obviously big day for him, or yesterday rather. We can't promise players first team football based on the basis of the transfer. So we can't say to Teddy Bishop, come to us, you're going to play 46 games a season, because right now as things stand, he might not. Because the front three, or that three behind Tom Hopper, that was the three that we really could promise first team football. That's where we could say, look what we've lost. We've lost Rogers, we've lost Johnson, we've lost George Graham, we've lost Harry Anderson. Zach Elbazedi will go. They're the areas where there was first team football to sell. We don't have that particularly now. And if we do, who's going to be missing out? I see Max Sanders playing a more important role this season. I see Theo Archibald certainly getting more game time this season. Fiorini hasn't come here to play 10 games. Chris Maguire's come here to play 46. Guarantee you that. Whether he does or not, I don't know, but he's certainly come for that. He could have quite easily gone back to Scotland, to the Scottish Premier League, played against Celtic and Rangers. There's 8 games where he'd be playing in front of 60,000 fans, or 4 games at least. So, he's coming to play. Dan Lundley, he certainly is. He's certainly coming here to play. And I made a slight error in my blog yesterday. Y-Scout told me he was 5'11". It seems he's had a bit of a spurt, because I'm now told he's 6'3". So certainly a centre forward. I think he's a player that we didn't have last season. And I think he's a player that, had we had last season, I'm going to go out on a limb, I think we would have gone up automatically. Because I think at times we needed a Tom or Hopper alternative. Callum Morton's injury robbed us of that. And then we didn't have another centre forward. We essentially went through all of last season with one centre forward in Tom Hopper. And then when Callum came back, Tom got injured. And that spell kind of March time, we just needed at times a big target man, someone that could hold the ball up, someone that could chip in with 5-10 goals a season. We didn't have that. I think we've got that now with Unlundlu. I can see him probably, if we were to sign another player who can play in the 10, I could actually see it being a tough season for Tom Hopper. Not because he's a bad player, but because we will prioritise these young players. You know, our reputation as a football club is being built upon developing young players. It's being built upon selling the dream to players that are released from Premier League clubs. I'm talking Theo Eden, I'm talking Max Sanders, I'm talking Anthony Scully. Players who may go on and have a big career in the game, but are looking for the stepping stone. And we are now, sorry, this is the CC, not great to walk through. We are now setting ourselves up as that stepping stone. So I think it's really important to remember that. So when a player like Lundlu comes in or Luis Fiorini comes in, they're the sort of players that we have got to give game time to. Not because we've signed something to Manchester City to say that he's going to play, or Southampton, or as it was rumoured, Arsenal to Tyrese Jules, but because that's what we do. If you advertise yourself as a club that supports youth, that develops youth, and then you get a reputation for it. And let's not forget, it's not just Brennan Johnson, it's not just Morgan Rogers, but Alex Palmer. Okay, he came to us with a reputation, but he's gone back with a bigger one. Could be West Brom's first team keeper. If he was our keeper, we owned him last season, and people were looking at buying Alex Palmer, he would be worth £1 million right now, guaranteed. TJ Ioma, the season he had last season, he might be a 7-figure player. If Brennan Johnson had done what he'd done for us and he was our player, you could sell him for a couple of £1 million. Okay, now these are not our players, but that's the point. We're getting that quality, we get that reputation, and eventually we start picking up the players who are released from those clubs and then who come to us and want to be worth £1 million next season, but be our player worth our £1 million that goes into our bank account. So it's really, really important that Fiorini, Lundaloo, and any keeper comes in, which I would imagine maybe Josh Griffith, comes in and gets regular football. Brentford have just gone up to the Premier League, and they've done that on a very unique model. They've done that on a model whereby results, there's a really interesting article, it talks about XG, so my apologies, but really interesting article that says that at Brentford, the result is not always the most important thing. And it sounded crazy to me, it blew my mind. But if you've got the process and the XG suggests that you are creating chances to score goals, stick with the process. Even if you're not winning those games, stick with the process. Rotate the players, look for the bargains, because once you get the process right, eventually the outcome becomes right. If you keep putting yourself in goal scoring positions time and again, eventually you'll start scoring goals. And when you do, it's hard to stop. And I think that we need to look at the Brentford model. I think we have looked at the Brentford model and gone, we'll have a little bit of that. We'll have a slice of that. We'll be the team that keep getting in the right positions. And if it doesn't always work, it doesn't always work. If your processes are right, eventually it will. And another team in our division that were very much like that, I think, are MK Dons. And I kind of called them out a little bit earlier on. I think they spend £163 on wages for every £100 that they earn. That blows my mind. But they have a very strict process. They came to our place. They stuck to their game. They got absolutely tanked, but they stuck to their process. They stuck to their game because they believe in it. And to a degree, it did work. So I think it's interesting just to kind of hold that in mind. So when Charlie, hang on, I'll be back in a minute. Come here. There's a truck coming. Please bear with me. I think it might even be a tractor. It is. They're spraying the field. There you go. Look. Fantastic. Charlie, come on, we'll go this way. Go this way. Okay, we'll go that way. He's the boss. So yeah, I think it's always worth bearing that in mind, that if it looks like we've missed out on Teddy Bishop, or if Tenai Watson is on loan or is on trial somewhere else, it looks like bad news. I tell you when the only real bad news, aside from obviously the manager's health and injuries, the only real bad news comes after the first game of the season, when you either win or lose games. And only then does missing out on players look like it may or may not be a good or a bad thing. And I think when you look at last season, did we miss out on any strikers? If we did, that would have been bad news with hindsight, because we certainly needed an additional striker during the season due to injuries. But there is no such thing, in my opinion, right now, as missing out on good players. There's no such thing in signing brilliant players right now, because you only know if they're brilliant players once they pull on the jersey. The jersey? God, you could tell I've been writing about MLS this morning. So I think it's important always to keep that grounding. It's always important, massively important, just to bear in mind all of the news, all of the pomp, all of the rumour, all of the media furore over who's signing who and all that sort of thing. It's only any good when you take to the field. Yeah, Ipswich looked like they had a great side last season. Yeah, Portsmouth had signed John Marquis, who should have been scoring goals for fun, and got Ronan Curtis, who was talking about what, £6, £7, £8 million. Didn't do either of them any good, did it? Because they finished outside the top six. And instead, a kid that we signed on loan from Nottingham Forest after the season had started, which some might say cast-offs, rejects, the players no one else wanted, one of our players of the season. And remember, our player of the season actually was a player who, not what we signed in the summer, not a player, sorry, wasn't giving you a chin there, I was just getting the dog off again. Not a player we signed in the summer, not somebody who was classed as, squad defining. It was a player we already had. A player not only did we already have, but had already been written off as one of the, under the previous manager. I remember when Danny first left, it was, well, George, now he'll go back, he'll go to Forest, he'll leave. Look what happened there. So all these new signings, all so-called perceived good news, bad news, perceive it how you want, and please do discuss it. I mean, it's what keeps sites like mine going. It's what keeps videos like these ticking over, I suppose. But I think it's always important just to maintain that grounding. Who would have thought after last summer's business, 1 year ago today, or maybe even longer than that, given how late the season started, who would have thought that we would have been talking about Lincoln City being one game away from the Championship last year? Only really robbed of Championship football through injuries. It was, let's be honest, it was, when you look back at the season. I just think it's important to keep grounding in that respect. So there we go. Let's have a look through some of your comments. If you've got any questions coming in, you can drop them over to me as well. I'll stay on for another 5 minutes if you've got questions. So Kate being very controversial, and like Kate, isn't it? To be fair, the overall quality of the Scottish Prem is on a par with League One. Yeah, I can see how that is. It's a different game. It's like you might say that the Dutch second division is on a par with League One as well, but it's a different pace of game, and some League One players wouldn't fit there, and vice versa. I tend to try not to be too critical of the Scottish Premier League. I appreciate that as a division, I think the low number of teams in that division make it appear less competitive, because if you have a bad team, you're playing 4 times a year. And so that creates more of a chasm. Whereas I think if it was a 24 team league, I think naturally teams like Aberdeen, potentially Hearts, Hibs, that would have more means, I think would actually be better. So I think that you could put Celtic and Rangers in the Premier League. Probably not now, but if you give Celtic and Rangers 2 years in the Premier League, they'd be top 6, because players would want to move to them. If the Scottish Premier League was more competitive and it had as many European space spots as our division does, I think it would be more competitive. So I think it's a victim of its own organisation, to be honest. Reece Marshall, Mr. Dog Walks, mate. Can't wait to get back to the band because I didn't get selected for the semi-final. Sorry you missed out on that, Reece. A lot of people did. It was a great afternoon or an evening. It was nice to be back, but it wasn't the same without everybody there. It's like going to see your family, but one half of it are not there. If you like your family, of course. If you don't like your family, I suppose it was a joy. So evening to Sam and the Whites over in New Zealand. Hope you're well. Jake Tong would rather have Ben Ward and Gary Hutchins still top than Wycombe Pigott. Right. Wycombe Pigott sounds a little bit like an estate agency, doesn't it? I'd like to have Pigott up top. I think he's a good player. White, not so much. Kate, again, down the years, there's always a striker who we get heavily linked with after one good year, then they go somewhere else and flop. Purcell. Yeah, good point. There's always a striker we get linked with who goes everywhere else and does well, though, isn't there? As Michael Bridges, for instance. Matthew Mann, have you heard of any goalkeepers coming in? Not aside from the Griffith rumour, no. I do wonder if Sam Long progresses, will we put a little bit of faith in him? Yeah, if we're going to sign Josh Griffith, England under 21 international at 21 years old, is that actually all that different to Sam Long? Maybe you bring in an experienced keeper and let him play understudy to Sam. Depends. We'll have to see. Matt Walker says 2 more wingers, a centre mid, a goalkeeper and a centre half needed. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure we need two more wingers. I think Zach Elbouzedi has gone. I think Theo Archibald plays there. Anthony Scully plays there. Chris Maguire plays there. I think Luis Fiorini realistically could play there. I'm not sure whether he's coming to play the 10 or not, but I think one more winger tops. Centre mid, again, I'm not so sure. Fiorini's coming to replace Grant. Where else did we lose a central midfielder? We've got Max Sanders, we've got Liam Bridcut, we've got Conor McGrandles, we've got James Jones. Yeah, I think centre mid actually we're sorted. Goalkeeper 100%, centre half, I'm on your side. I think we need a TJ Ioma, a centre half that can play right back. I think we need an option to be able to do something like go three at the back, do a Southgate and switch it up sometimes in games. Whether we will or not, I don't know. So I think another centre half is essential, especially given the injury record of Joe Walsh and Adam Jackson. So I agree with you on that. What do I think will happen to players like Hayden, Brooks, and Freddie Draper? Well, obviously Hayden Can's signed professional terms with us, so I think it's likely that we see him in the EFL Trophy. I think he'll be around the first team. It might be a season too early for him to play regular football. Who knows? Second half of the season, Gainsborough, Boston, something like that for some senior football. Billy Brooks and Freddie Draper, I think two different prospects. I think Billy Brooks certainly be involved in pre-season. He's very good. He's certainly one that I think the club will have an eye on. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets a deal later in the season, but also wouldn't surprise me if he isn't one that goes out to Gainsborough for regular football. And as for Freddie Draper, well, look, if it was me, if you've got Tom Hopper and you've got Lunderloo up top, you bring Freddie Draper in, give him his contract, have him around the first team, play him in the EFL Trophy, and progress him, because he looks like a real prospect. He can certainly finish. Okay, it's in a friendly against Charlie. 1 minute. Charlie, the hair up there. We'll go that way. He can finish. He finished in a friendly against Forest. He finished against Watford. I think he's a big prospect. Big prospect. Jake Tong, Monsma on his way out. Not that I'm aware of, but if it is, then you roll with the punches, don't you? But if Monsma goes, I would actually say that we then obviously need two centre halves. Definitely. Without a doubt. Plymouth Argyle put Cooper in last year, an academy graduate, and did well. Yeah, by all means. Do you know what? Academy graduates, whether they're goalkeepers, whether they're strikers, whether they're anything like that, they can do well. There's two sides to the youngster thing. You can always talk about experience. I've gone a bit Keith Flint, haven't I? You can talk about experience. You can talk about all that sort of stuff. But do you know what the honest truth is? If they're good enough, they'll play. And you look at the players in Euro 2020, Poland playing their young kid there, Jude Bellingham, Jadon Sancho, some of those players, 19, 20, 21, they're good enough. So if they're good enough, age is no barrier. So, right, well, thank you very much. I'm at a bit of an impasse here because I've got the dog here, and then up there I've got a road and two hare. And 3 days ago, he went off after a hare, and I ended up chasing him half the way to Withcall, which is a mile or so away. So I'm not prepared to do that again. Look, it's been great to get back on the video. Haven't done any. I have resubscribed now to StreamYard. I even cut my subscription, and it's easier on my hands to hold it in this awful kind of portrait rather than landscapes. My apologies. Didn't plan to do a video. Would have done my hair and maybe not worn my Team Jim Bob t-shirt, but there we go. So thank you very much for watching. If you are a YouTube user, please do subscribe to YouTube. Looking to try and get up to around 1,000 subscribers. There's a long way to go yet, because then we can monetize it. And my plan is to monetize it and plow that straight back into the club. So all of your views mean something. So it'd be really important to me, to Jake, who's going to be doing much more YouTube content as well this year. Be important to the two of us at least, if you could subscribe. And if you could get your mum to subscribe, and maybe your dog as well. I'm not sure my dog can use YouTube, but there we go. So thank you very much. Keep an eye out for any news. Rest assured, I will try and get a video done at least once a week, whether it's a dog walk or whether we go in the bar or something like that. So there we go. Podcast will be next week. There won't be one this week, unless we do a little bit of something live on Saturday, because Ben is over at my house. So we shall see. In the meantime, up the Imps.